Hello, very good to be able to talk to you and to send my best wishes to Globe Oil Colombo. Uh, as it happens, the big price outlook conference of early March has been postponed to June. So, Globe Oil Colombo seems to be the only conference which is taking place. So, many congratulations to the organizers, to Colombo for recovering so well after that terrorist atrocity, and to Kailash and his entire Teflas team, and to our friends, Solvent Extractors Association, Atulji, Bharat Bhai, Sandeep, for persevering and going through with this conference, which now provides possibly the only guideline for participants of how this market is going to move. I'm also trying out a little experiment today. I have not prepared any slides, and I am not going to give you too much of workload on statistics because that is what every speaker does. I'm not going to show you any graph. I'm not even going to show you any bullet points. All you have to view and watch is my face and listen to my words. So, this is more like a fireside chat where I will talk to you of how I see things, how I have observed the market evolve in the last few months, and then probably give you my estimate of where the market is likely to go in the next few months. If we stand back and look at the performance of the market, and particularly the performance of, we knew some of the major factors which were likely to influence the market. We knew the repercussions and the aftermath of the El Nino. We knew that the trees were going through a period of stress. We knew that demand was going to be very strong with the Indonesian mandate. And we knew that in the period of low prices, farmers had applied less fertilizer, or in many cases had not applied any fertilizer. They had skipped one round. And as a result of that, production was going to be soft. These factors were discussed in several conferences, but the big price move which took place in December actually took a lot of people by surprise and completely wrong footed all the analysts, forecasters, and others. And the reason is twofold. One is that the Chinese investors, some people call them speculators, I like to call them investors. Many of them are known to me and my friends. These are the Chinese funds, and they are huge in terms of they have billions of dollars to deploy in the market. What is surprising is the amount of homework that they do. Some of them had done their homework very thoroughly in terms of rainfall data, temperature, sunshine days, etc. And they had come to the conclusion that palm production was in for a very tough time. They were right. What wrong footed many of us was how quickly and how early they got off the mark, far earlier than any of us imagined. And I've tried to do a lot of thinking and a lot of research and talking to people to see what triggered the early takeoff of this market. And I've narrowed it down to one particular date, which is the 16th of October. And if you look at the BMD performance on that day, the market went up by about 39 ringgits. And what was the most important news on that day? It was the announcement from Indonesia of biodiesel mandated biodiesel and mandate allocations to producers of 9.6 million kiloliters for calendar year 2020. I think that was the catalyst. The market was expecting Indonesia to go to B30. President Jokowi had been talking about it. Everyone knew he was very determined. But the actual announcement of the allocations to the various producers put the measure beyond doubt. And the Chinese funds took that very seriously, as did one or two players in the physical palm oil market also. And if you look at the performance of the market, we were at 22.53 on the 16th of October closing. By Thursday, the 24th, 1 week later, we were at 23.82. And by 30th October, in fact, on 30th October, the market went up 81 ringgits, and we were very short of, just a bit short of 2,500, 2498. Of course, the big moves came a bit later, but this was already flagging that something big was going to happen in the market. There were one or two analysts who kept saying that, oh, there is so much oil, prices cannot go up, etc., etc. Now, this is also the time you will remember of this famous SEA advisory to Indian importers. Now, I think that advisory was in good faith, was well meaning, but it may have lulled some of the Indian importers into not buying, not importing, and they may have missed the mark. We have to bear that in mind. Whenever an advisory is issued, it is only an advisory, and the individual importer and refiner has to make his own decision of what he wants to do. Because an advisory is only a caution that, look, you may have some trouble with customs, etc. So be a little careful. That was it. One particular factor that I would mention to you, and which I picked up but did not act on, and of course we are always wise after the event, is that on 6th of November, when I was in Guangzhou, and this is the CIOC conference, it's a 1 day conference packed with lectures by Chinese experts, one or two international experts, and then, of course, participants from Chinese crushers who all come on the stage and have a discussion. One of my friends who was involved in the Dalian futures, in fact, warned me and said that the market is taken off very well. And I was complimenting them, saying how well they had studied the market and taken it up. And he was saying one unfortunate part of this is that Chinese New Year this year is in January, 25th Jan. Then, unfortunately, while the fundamentals are extremely bullish, this market will not last very long because, and this is very surprising but interesting, is that before Chinese New Year, we all expect our bonuses to be paid. And for the bonuses to be paid, you have to sell and realize your profits. So this market is going to finish in January, well before Chinese New Year, so that the bonuses can be paid. And I thought it was a bit of a joke. And but what happened actually shocked me, surprised me, and it happened exactly as my friend, the person who runs one of the Chinese funds, had actually mentioned to me. The market finished on 31st December at 3,046. On 2nd January, we hit 3,126 closing price. Then there was a sharp dip. But as it always happens, the major bull markets don't just come off in one shot. So there was a bounce. On the 10th of January, we closed at 3,134. But that was it. 13th and 14th January, we saw big corrections in the market. Now, Chinese New Year was on 25th. So the selling had started around the first week of Jan and accelerated around 13th, 14th of January. because that was virtually the last time that the big sellers could take the profits and run. And that, in a way, broke the back of the market. And all of you know that when the markets reopened after Chinese New Year, uh, particularly the BMD, because China was closed for an extended period of a week, but the BMD opened, there was an absolute torrent of selling in the market. The theory is that people who were long in the Dalian and who could not get out because the Dalian was closed came to the BMD and sold. And that is how the BMD had this very rare occurrence of a 10% decline in prices. 10% decline is a huge decline and a limit down. So we came down from almost 3150 to 2250, a decline of 600 ringgits. This is a huge decline. And then, of course, prices had become very easy, very manageable. The markets were oversold. And then there was again a bounce. And I think we are right now in the midst of that bounce. We have recaptured about 50% of those 600 ringgits that we lost. We have regained about 300 of those ringgits. And the market is now trying to decipher for itself whether it wishes the rally to continue or whether this is the last hurrah. It would be wrong of me to try and speculate today as to what is going to be. But at this juncture, having given you a tour, a guided tour of how exactly the market worked from October till January, let me bring you to some of the facts and figures, though I promised I would not dwell too much upon facts and figures. Malaysia finished the year producing 19.856 million tons, which is more or less in line with what most of us had been predicting. The problem with us analysts is that during the year there is a lot of pressure on us to revise our estimates. I last year wisely stuck to my original estimate of 20.3 million tons. And I refused to revise it even when the production was overperforming in March, April, May, June. And then from July onwards, the production began to sink. And then, of course, people were saying, now you revised your estimate downwards. I didn't touch it. And I believe the result at 19.856 is fairly in line. I think production underperformed considerably November and December. And it now looks like even January production has underperformed. And it also gives the impression that this is now the bottom or the worst of the effects of everything: lack of fertilizer, exhaustion, drought, everything combined. This January production appears to be bottom with all the bad factors come in. And from here onwards, we may see a period of stability in production or the inevitable recovery. When is the recovery likely to start? In Malaysia, the age profile of the trees is slightly older than Indonesia. Indonesia is a young country, young industry, young trees. So Indonesian production is likely to recover faster than or earlier than Malaysia. Climate wise, there is a little bit of a dry patch in Riau in Sumatra at the moment, but I think that could all eventually get sorted out. So my prognosis is that the recovery will in Malaysia will be a little slower than people would expect. Probably late April, early March will give us the first signals of a recovery in production. If by chance we get signals of recovery in production by late March, then that would be a factor for the market to take into down. But as of now, today, I would say that based on what we have studied and the data that we have, the Malaysian recovery will not start until late April or early May. And that is why you see that there is an inverted market and there is a big premium on the AMJ compared to the JAS. I was on record saying that the production in Malaysia in the first half of 2020 will be 1 million tons less than the production of 2019 first half. I think that was an underestimate. Malaysia's production in Jan Feb combined 2020 itself will be 1 million tons less than the production we saw in Jan Feb 2019. And the total production in Malaysia Jan June 2020 will be 1.5 million tons less than Jan June 2019. This is the scale of problems that we have inherited from the drought, lack of fertilizer, age profile of the trees, etc. But the recovery in the second half of the year is also likely to be very good. So good because remember, we are not comparing like with like. Second half of 2020 will be a period of recovery for Malaysia, whereas it was a period of shrinkage in 2019. So recovery is also going to be very good. And eventually, I think production in 2020, calendar year 2020, will be roughly unchanged from 2019. So very poor production in the first half with very good production in the second half. And that is something which the market is telling us, maybe not in such brutally frank terms, but if you see the inverted market and the premium in the first half and the relative discounts in the second half, the market is telling us that it expects a very strong recovery in production. The other factor is, of course, the Indonesian mandate. So far, so good. The mandate is going well. The blenders who are supposed to take delivery of the palm biodiesel are all doing their needful. But we need to watch and see, and I believe the months of March, April, May will be important. That is where we will have to see whether the system works perfectly, seamlessly, or whether there are bottlenecks and suddenly the blenders tell the producers of biodiesel, this month we are not lifting so much, please hold back or something like that. So far, there is no hitch, I must admit. But this is untried territory, untested territory. And we will have to watch in March, April, May, and you must have very good relations with your friends in Indonesia if you want to know the truth on the ground as to what it is and find out because Indonesian statistics come out too late. So it is mainly by word of mouth that we will come to know whether the biodiesel system is working perfectly or not. The one surprising factor is the strength of demand from Europe. Despite all that the EU and the European Parliament keeps saying and legislating and all that, the appetite for palm oil from the energy industry, from the biodiesel industry, is phenomenal and very impressive. And I think that is one of the highlights, or going to be one of the highlights of 2020. Energy and biofuel demand for palm oil from Europe. And I think we should watch that carefully. So while we are going to have a lot more production of palm oil, particularly in Indonesia in 2020, I think the demand side is also well supplied. And for that reason, I don't expect very, very low prices to come back to the palm market in 2020. Many of the analysts are talking that the average price for the year will be between 2,400 and 2,500 ringgits, which is a decent price for plantations who were earlier struggling with 2100 and 2200. These days, remember, the cost of production has gone up phenomenally, particularly wages and other things have gone up. So the plantations need 2400 or 2500 to make a decent living. And it looks like 2020 is going to be a good year for them by and large. If we look at worldwide availability or S&Ds, 2019 was a problem year because the rapeseed crops all over the world were in trouble. Soybeans, remember the US had a short crop and we had problems of crushing in China. China, the crush did not expand, in fact, it contracted. So the production of vegetable oils in the world, the soft oils particularly, was under pressure. And palm oil, as you know, did not grow or grew very little. The only oil which literally saved us was sunflower oil. And I don't have to tell you, in India, we have enjoyed sunflower oil. I am surprised India is not buying more sunflower oil, considering what a fine oil it is, how competitive it is in the world today. Next year, we must expect that the rapeseed production in the world will improve, stabilize, and even expand. Of course, the biggest expansion I think is going to take place in India. Second is that the US farmer may not plant as much of soybeans, though I think we must expect more plantings. But Argentina and Brazil, for currency considerations and the Chinese interest, will be going to town planting soybeans. And the rest of the world, including Ukraine, is planting more and more soybeans because soybeans is a fantastic crop, very hardy crop, and very easy to grow. So I think soybean cultivation will increase. The question next year will be on sunseed because we have had five, six bumper crops in a row. So are we going to continue with this fantastic sequence of success in sunseed? Because sunseed, being a high oil bearing seed, helps a lot in terms of availability of oil. And next year, remember, we are expecting a strong recovery in the second half of the year in palm oil production. So Malaysia will be unchanged, but Indonesia will record growth. And remember, palm oil is grown now in many other parts of the world, including Central America, Colombia, Thailand, and of course India. And we must expect improvement in availability. So we are looking at a situation where probably the market has peaked. It may have a second peak. It is not unusual for bull markets to have a second peak and then a gradual slowing down of the prices and better availability. Now that brings me to the penultimate point that I wish to discuss. That is my view of the world economy. We are in a very bad shape at the moment. I'm afraid the world is not paying attention to the economic effects, impact of the coronavirus, not only on the economy of China, but also on the economy of the whole of Southeast Asia, what I would call the greater China area. And also, in due course, the economy of India, the Middle East, Europe, and even the United States. In fact, the world is now so intertwined, and China makes up, remember now, 17% of the world economy. So if China slows down, inevitably the rest of the world has to slow down. At the time of the SARS epidemic, China constituted only 4% of the world economy. Today, they constitute 17% of the world economy. And I think even in the United States, in terms of manufacturing, supply chain factors are going to kick in very quickly. That will bring some kind of reason to the very ebullient and jubilant mood that we are seeing in equity markets. In my opinion, the one market which has correctly analyzed the crisis of the coronavirus is the crude oil market. The crude oil market rightly started going down and started discounting the economic effects of the coronavirus. And I believe the crude oil market was right in what it did. And I am afraid other markets will also have to discount those impacts, those consequences as we go forward. I believe interest rates will come lower during 2020. We are already seeing some influence of that. I think more parts of the world will have to wrestle with what is called negative interest rates. It's not a great thing, but it does help to revive economic activity by forcing people to invest rather than keep money in the bank. Indian interest rates are too high, even today, and inevitably they will have to follow the line of least resistance, which is downwards. And as Indian interest rates come down, one of the big props to the Indian rupee, which is the high interest rates, will be gone. And so we may see a slight weakening of the rupee. Not bad at all, because the Indian economy needs a softer rupee to stimulate exports and, more importantly, to revive the economy and make imports more expensive. India cannot go on importing the way we are importing and, in a way, subjugating our own manufacturing industry. So, a softer rupee will be something good for India. And I would hope and I think it is probable that in the second half of the year the rupee will weaken. We have seen here in Malaysia, for example, that the ringgit strengthened to 4.05. Within a few days, it is now back to 4.12. And actually, the economic fundamentals of Malaysia are rather good. So, what is happening is that the dollar rules as the king of all world currencies, and all other currencies are going to be a little weaker, despite the fact that dollar interest rates are going down. We have, of course, the US primaries now coming up. I think on 3rd of March, you have what is called Super Tuesday. And after that, we will come to know who is going to be the challenger to President Trump. And then, of course, the US election. So there will be some element of uncertainty. The betting in the markets is that President Trump will be re-elected. We will have to see. I am not making any prediction because so far in all my predictions about President Trump, I have been wrong. So I don't want to to confound my misery even further. But elections are elections. Things can be touch and go. A lot will depend on who the candidate is, and we will have to watch. But one thing is for sure, Trump owns the bull market. Equity markets have flourished and prospered under President Trump. Markets love President Trump. I don't know why. Probably it is his policy of cutting taxes or deregulating. Probably it's deregulation more than cutting taxes. But markets love him. So if he gets into trouble, or if a left wing Democrat challenges him and does well in the opinion polls, then clearly we have to be braced for severe turbulence in the equity markets. This is something we have to take into account. And two things on which we can end this lecture, both very satisfactory, very pleasurable things for me to say. First, I congratulate the Indian futures markets, which have shown great resilience in the turbulent times that we have seen in the last 6 months. Markets, NCDEX, MCX, palm, soya have traded all the time and traded very efficiently. I think the volumes have also gone up, open interest has gone up. This is a step in the right direction. And let me congratulate the government also, and those of you who meet the government of officers and officials should convey this, that we are genuinely happy that this government has not intervened in the markets and stopped them from operating. Prices went to record highs, both in palm oil NCX and soybean oil NCDEX. But the government stuck to its guns and kept the markets open and allowed the market to function. And markets always function. These are efficient markets. Prices peaked, prices are now lower. They could even get further low. So this is a very satisfactory thing because India needs very active, very strong, and very deep futures markets, which we don't have, unfortunately. But in this last 1 year, I have seen we are moving in the right direction. So that is something of good news and something that we congratulate our officials and government who have put this together and created this policy of non-interference. And my second and something that I'm very proud of is that while India seems to be struggling, Indians are doing extremely well. And the latest example of an Indian becoming CEO of IBM or an Indian becoming CEO of WeWork shows that our Indian talent and Indian ability is being well recognized and very successful in the world. So, with those words, and I wish you all very well in your trading, I hope I can end on a happy note without having to give out a price outlook. Thank you very much.